I tried to do a video before explaining in an intuitive way why there's no Quintic formula, and although I think there was some merit to it, I believe too much of it was fuzzy and some parts were inaccurate, since I didn't know what the heck was going on. So I'm attempting a follow-up here, even though I still am not sure I know what's going on. I'm going to try a different approach to showing the Quintic is unsolvable this time, more aligned with the traditional methods. I don't think it will be near as intuitive, but I think it will be a little closer to being more accurate. At least that's my hope. Sadly, we live in a world where what's intuitive does not always equal what's correct. But perhaps we can step out of the domain of what's correct sometimes and ultimately choose temporary intuitive inaccuracy, like that featured in my last video, as a hopeful shortcut to ultimate correctness, similar to what Gaussian integrals do when temporarily going from 2D to 3D, and Cauchy's residue theorem does when going from the reals to the complex and back to the reals when evaluating an improper integral in the reals. Let me sum up the method I used in my other video first before proceeding. In the last video, I started with the idea that Vietez formulas possess a wonderful symmetry, and because of that, for a Quintic formula to work, all 5 roots need to be interchangeable. Then I showed how a root nested inside another root could cause issues if the root inside the nest were swapped with a third root outside the nest. So the roots we have inside of radicals never interact with roots outside of radicals, and I hastily claim that normal subgroups operated in a similar way, in that what's in the normal subgroup never interacts with what's outside the normal subgroup. I'm not sure if that's always true. In any case, from there I claimed A5 had no normal subgroups, and I was pretty much done after that. That sums up the last video, and now let's proceed with a more traditional path to Quintic insolvability, and I will try to make it simpler than other videos that go over the more traditional path, if I can. I should go slower over stuff, but I'm too lazy. So I get why other videos don't like to go slow through this stuff either. I start with Vietez formulas again, but this time I make a less strong claim, even though the claim in the last video I made may have been true. This time, instead of saying all 5 roots must be swappable with each other, I will say they can be assumed to be swappable until proven otherwise. Loosening the original claim in this manner may not be required to show the Quintic is unsolvable, but I believe it has other applications in group theory that some jabroni like me is never going to use. Now, I'm going to use a strategy which will consist of what I will call revealed roots and unrevealed roots. And I will do what other videos usually do, and do radical field extensions to the field of rationals. And I will use a Galois group to track what roots have been revealed by new fields and what roots are still yet to be found. Initially, I had no idea what a Galois group was, but I believe this isn't a bad way to think of it. Whatever roots haven't been found by whatever field extension I am on, I'll still assume they can be fully swapped with each other, just in case they're all conjugates of some yet to be revealed root. The hard thing to remember about the Galois group that I seem to forget over and over is its elements are not roots themselves, but permutations of roots. I believe that's why the sigma notation is generally used rather than the labeled r's that I like to use when I label roots. Now when we add a radical field that actually has a root in it, which are the only types of radical field extensions we care about, the addition will not only reveal one root, but also every conjugate the root possesses in the field. And these can be freely swapped with no issues, since they're pretty much algebraically equivalent. This ability to freely swap stuff in any order is a property commonly called Abelian. And I think there's something in Galois theory that says this extended portion of the field corresponds to something called a quotient group. This consists of only permutations of the conjugates of the roots in the specific field and no other roots. And since the roots are all easily interchangeable with each other, their permutations are Abelian. Man, a lot of mathematical vocabulary all at once, enough to discourage the great Sarah Inman even. She was the girl in the riff track short, The Snob, and she'd do algebra on Friday nights, even when her parents begged her to go out and party instead. Anyway, the vocabulary is my least favorite thing about this group theory stuff, and why I sure was not quick to embrace the insolvability of the quintic in the first place. Abelian is a pretty easy definition, so I'll ignore that one and focus on the other two. To review, a Galois group is a group that tracks what roots have not been revealed yet by field extensions. A quotient group is the group of permutations of the conjugates of a root in a specific field and no other roots. That quotient group definition ties in nicely with keeping roots inside a radical nest away from roots that are outside a radical nest that I pointed out as problematic in my first video. That's also another reason why we add nested radicals and layers when we're doing field extensions. First the inmost layer and then the outer ones. We're actually almost finished showing there's no general formula for a quintic in radicals, although it sure as heck doesn't intuitively feel like it. The Galois group tracking the permutations of roots that haven't been revealed yet has an inverse relationship with the field extensions that are taking place. As field extensions get bigger, the Galois group gets smaller. Since the Galois group's purpose is to track unrevealed root permutations, this makes sense. As more roots are revealed, the possibilities of what's left shrink. So we shrink this Galois group by peeling away layers of quotient groups over and over each time a field is added until we get down to the identity group and have nothing left. And now all there is left to say really is that if we use the symmetric group S5 as our Galois group for a general quintic, if we peel off a quotient group and get to a layer called A5, we get stuck and can't peel off any more quotient groups. It doesn't have any proper quotient groups at all. That's why quintics are insolvable. Kind of anticlimactic, really. Tying this back to the conclusion in my original video, I guess an A5 permutation group would be like an attempted swap of a root inside a radical with one outside that isn't a conjugate, and it's kind of like quotient groups may be mixed together so they can't peel off nicely. But that's all speculation on my part. I'm not sure how A5 was found to not have any quotient groups, And I don't really want to look into it too much since the other stuff I just went through was what I was really interested in. I think it's because Galois theory says a quotient group is all the part of a group that's not a normal subgroup, and normal subgroups can be tested by being invariant under a process called conjugation. I looked into that stuff, but I couldn't make any sense of it at all. The closest I got was what I claimed in the last video about full group permutations, never pushing any elements out, but I think the criteria I mentioned were too strong for a normal subgroup series and instead are called a characteristic series, at least from what Copilot AI seemed to be telling me. I even made a nice chart giving an indication that V4 might be a normal subgroup of A4, trying to understand the stuff better. But it does seem evident that normal subgroups are composed of layers of quotient groups though, at least for solvable groups. I'm starting to worry that I may be enjoying pseudo-math more than actual math, where what's intuitive and incorrect is preferred over correct and unintuitive. But I think I've actually always been that way. Whatever the case, I think I still deserve a wooden spoon award for all of my efforts here, misguided or not.